Hey, I'm Kaylee Archie, and welcome to our segment of Human Stupid Tricks. Not to be confused with David Letterman's Stupid Human Tricks. We totally didn't rip them off. Anyway, here's my person for today, Maddie Dyer. Maddie, why don't you come up here and tell us a little bit about your trick for this week?
I'm going to rollerblade and play the ukulele.
All right, guys, let's go check out Maddie's trick. Hey guys, thanks for coming and watch Maddie shred the ukulele on the blades. I don't know if that's what the kids are saying these days, but I hope it is. Join us next week for another human stupid trick and for our next person. Was that good, or should I redo that?
I raise a hallelujah in the presence of my enemies. I raise a hallelujah louder than the unbelief. I raise a hallelujah. My weapon is a melody. I raise a hallelujah. Heaven comes to fight for me. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm, louder and louder. You're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. I raise a hallelujah with everything inside of me. Sing a little louder. 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 In the presence of my enemies. Sing a little louder. Louder than the unbelief. Sing a little louder. My weapon is a melody. Sing a little louder. Heaven comes to fight for me. Sing a little louder. In the presence of my enemies. Sing a little louder. Louder than the unbelief. Sing a little louder. My weapon is a melody. Sing a little louder. Heaven comes to fight for me. Sing a little louder. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder. You're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. I raise a hallelujah. I raise a hallelujah. I raise a hallelujah. I raise a hallelujah. What amazing hope that we have in Jesus. There is nothing like him, and there is nothing that gives us more hope than him. In Psalms 91, starting in verse 14, it says, "The Lord says, I will rescue those who love me. I will protect those who trust in my name. When they call on me, I will answer. I will be with them in trouble. I will rescue and honor them. I will reward them with a long life and give them my salvation." That is such an amazing promise, and the only way that we can have this hope and the only way we can have this salvation and this connection with God is through his son, Jesus Christ. No matter what's going on around us, he is always worthy of our praise. In the good times, in the bad times, on the mountaintop experiences, or in the valleys, God is still God and he has never changed. And that is such an amazing promise that we have.
It's fine. Hey guys, welcome to youth group tonight. We hope you guys are enjoying it. We wish we could meet in person, but because of everything that's going on around us, we have to meet virtually, of course. But we're just as excited that you're here to join with us and join with what we think God has to speak to you tonight. And I'm Kaylee, and this is
Crystal.
my mom. And so if you guys have been following along with us for the past few weeks at youth group, we've been going through a series called Doubt It. We're actually going to wrap that up tonight, me and Mom are. We're going to give you a little bit more insight into what this means and how God and godly counsel can help you battle your doubts and battle decisions that you're trying to make. So with that being said, we're going to start off playing a game. I know you guys love games. And we're going to play a game called Road Signs. So I want you to get with your family, 6 feet apart though, social distancing, and get with your family, and we're going to play a road sign game. So, yeah, we need to be a little bit farther apart, I realize that, but we're limited on space right now. So, I'm going to hold up a few different signs, and when I hold them up, I want you all to guess at home what you think this sign means. So, some of them may be obvious, and some of them may be a little more difficult. So, we're going to figure it out. So, the first sign, this one's really hard, so I hope you guys can get it, okay? What do you guys think this is? Stop. It's stop. Good. I know you guys got that. Here's the second one. A little bit more difficult. What do you think this means? Yes, do not go in there. Crystal wants to do one. So,
What is this one? A little bit difficult. Not as straightforward. Railroad crossing.
good.
So be cautious.
All right, now we're gonna get into some difficult ones. Why don't you see if they know what this one means, Mom?
Anybody?
Have you ever seen that before? I honestly not really sure what it means, but they have something against squirrels, is all I know.
Picture of a
So,
squirrel.
Yeah, and red around it. Not really
Maybe
sure.
don't feed the squirrels. I don't know.
We don't know. Here's another one. See if you guys can guess this one. Anybody ever seen this one? Just based on context clues, I think it means don't poop in the woods. But I can't tell you that for certain because I have no resources. But that's just what I would assume it is. So, yeah, isn't that what life is like sometimes? Not like pooping in the woods, but like signs. We have signs that sometimes direct us and show us what we should do and where we should go. And sometimes they're really clear in our life, and sometimes they're not clear at all. And that can be really frustrating when we really want a sign and we really want God's direction, but we feel like we have no sign at all, and we feel like we have no guidance or direction, and we have no idea what to do. So we start to doubt, God, are you there? God, are you listening? Are you going to help me in this decision? And for the last few weeks, like I talked about, we've been talking about what to do when we have doubts and questions about God. This week, we're going to wrap up our conversation by talking about what to do when we're questioning what God wants us to do.
Okay. Can any of you see into the future? Do you know exactly what that looks like for you? Were you planning on going to college? Do you know where you'll go? Do you know what you're going to do? And what you're going to be working at? Who you're going to marry? Where you'll be in 10 years? Or how many children you may have? We all have certain ideas or hopes or goals or dreams when it comes to these things, but obviously none of us know for sure because we're not fortune tellers or God. Unless you believe you've somehow seen into the future, the direction of your life is largely unknown, and that can be scary. Like, what if you make the wrong decision? How do you figure it out? How do you figure out where God wants to lead you? And that's what we're going to be touching on in tonight's lesson.
Yeah, and I think that question of what if I make the wrong decision has paralyzed me in a lot of different decisions in my life, and I've let it have that power over me. And so I'm going to tell you guys a story about a time that I had to make a really big decision, and it was a very hard decision to make, but it ended up being one of the best decisions I've ever made. And so I was a freshman in college at EKU, and I was trying to make the decision of whether or not to transfer to KCU or to stay at EKU. I'm going to be honest with you all, I didn't seek much guidance on where to go to school when I chose EKU. So when I chose to go to EKU, first starting out in college, I didn't really seek any guidance from any godly people. I really didn't seek God in that decision at all. My friends were going there, so I just made that decision to go there because it was an easy choice. It was an easy decision. Never in a million years would I have chose KCU to go to school because we all thought that was crazy because it was in our backyard and we wanted to get out of Grayson, as fast as possible, like any 18-year-old wants to do. So, and we spoke really negatively about it. And it wasn't until I went away to school and our community for a year that I really started to appreciate Grayson and what our community had to offer. I started considering playing soccer again because I miss being a part of a team and I miss playing sports, and transferring to KCU. It was a hard decision and I had no idea what to do. I prayed about it and this time when I was trying to make this decision whether to go to KCU or stay at EKU, I did seek guidance from trusted mentors and godly wisdom and godly advice from people, and I definitely prayed about it a lot. And I reaped those benefits from seeking that guidance. And so it was coming the end of my freshman year, and I had to make a decision. One day, I was, we all want to sign, and I hadn't got a sign yet at all. but I'd been seeking godly wisdom and guidance, and I got a call from the admissions office at KCU, and they were interested in me coming to work for them over the summer as a student worker and through the academic year. And it was odd that they were asking me to come work for them because, one, I wasn't a student at KCU yet, and I hadn't even decided fully I was going to go there. And if I did come to KCU, I was going to be an athlete, and they never typically employed athletes in the KCU admissions as work studies because they have a really demanding schedule. They can be kind of flaky because they have a lot of things they have to do, like games, practices, things like that. But nevertheless, they wanted me to come in for an interview, and they ended up offering me the job. At this point, I was still trying to decide what to do. But after this, I felt like this was a door God was opening, and I needed to put my fears about transferring aside, my fears about whether I was going to make the wrong decision, trying to figure out what God actually wanted me to do, and I needed to take that leap of faith. So I did, and it was one of the best decisions I've made. By transferring to KCU, I got to play soccer again. I developed friendships that pushed me in my relationship with God. I was poured into by mentors and staff there, and I grew up so much, and I grew in my relationship with God most importantly. I don't think I would have made that decision though if I would not have prayed about it and sought wise counsel from godly people I trusted. And if I wouldn't have walked through the door God opened and had taken that leap of faith, then I wouldn't have made that decision either. And so I just encourage you, as you're making decisions as well, learn from my mistake the first time. Not that one school is better than the other. That's not what I'm getting at. It's just sometimes different places are better fit for you and your growth. And it's important that you seek wisdom as you try to decide what best place fits for you, because what place fits for 10 other people might not be the best fit for you. And so you really want to figure out, how am I going to develop the most in my relationship with God and just as an individual in general. And so I definitely reaped those benefits when I sat down and actually did that. So the decision I made was difficult, but it was nothing compared to the decision that once had to be made by a woman named Esther.
Okay, and we're going to read Esther 2 through 4 here in a minute, but before we do that, here is what you need to know, some of the key points in this passage. There was a powerful king of Persia named Xerxes. Xerxes did not follow God, but there were many Jewish people in his kingdom who did. And one day, Xerxes got drunk and angry at his wife, Queen Vashti, because she refused to parade herself in front of a bunch of rulers Xerxes wanted to impress with her beauty. So Xerxes threw Vashti out of the palace and began a search for a new wife. He was determined to find the most beautiful girl in all of Persia to be his queen, whether she wanted to be his queen or not. So if you can get your Bibles and open them to Esther, and we will begin in chapter 2. We'll give you a minute to do that. And this is a little bit of a longer chapter, so I guess we're going to read it all. Huh?
But we're going to read it together like
Yes.
we would at youth group. So
you want me to just read this whole chapter?
yeah, you read too.
Okay. So, and above my chapter 2, it says Esther made queen. So, later, when the anger of King Xerxes had subsided, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what he had decreed about her. Then the king's personal attendants proposed, "Let a search be made for beautiful young virgins for the king. Let the king appoint commissioners in every province of his realm to bring all these beautiful girls into the harem at the citadel of Susa." Is that how you say that?
Sure.
"Let them be placed under the care of Hegai, the king's eunuch, who is in charge of the women, and let beauty treatments be given to them. Then let the girl who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti." This advice appealed to the king, and he followed it. So now there was in the citadel of Susa a Jew of the tribe of Benjamin, named Mordecai, son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Cush, who had been carried into exile from Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. Among those taken captive with
I have no idea.
Joachim,
Yep.
king of Judah, Mordecai had a cousin named Hadassah, whom he had brought up because she had neither father nor mother. This girl was also known as Esther, which is a little easier to say, was lovely in form and features, and Mordecai had taken her as his own daughter when her father and mother died. When the king's order and edict had been proclaimed, many girls were brought to the citadel of Susa and put under the care of Haggai. Esther also was taken to the king's palace and entrusted to him, who had charge of the harem. The girl pleased him and won his favor. Immediately he provided her with beauty treatments and special food. He assigned to her 7 maids selected from the king's palace and moved her and her maids into the best place in the harem. So she had already won favor there. Esther had not revealed her nationality and family background because Mordecai had forbidden her to do so. Every day he walked back and forth near the courtyard of the harem to find out how Esther was and what was happening to her. Before a girl's turn came to go into King Xerxes, she had to complete 12 months of beauty treatments prescribed for the women, 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 with perfumes and cosmetics. And this is how she would go to the king. Anything she wanted was given her to take with her from the harem to the king's palace. In the evening she would go there, and in the morning return to another part of the harem to the care of Shashgaz, I don't know, the king's eunuch who was in charge of the concubines. She would not return to the king unless he was pleased with her and summoned her by name. So 12 months of beauty treatments. That is crazy. Well, not that I wouldn't enjoy beauty treatments. When the turn came for Esther, the girl Mordecai had adopted, the daughter of his uncle, to go to the king, she asked for nothing other than what Haggai, the king's eunuch who was in charge of the harem, suggested. And Esther won the favor of everyone who saw her. She was taken to King Xerxes in the royal residence in the 10th month, the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. Now the king was attracted to Esther more than to any of the other women, and she won his favor and approval more than any of the other virgins. So he set a royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. And the king gave a great banquet, Esther's banquet, for all his nobles and officials. He proclaimed a holiday throughout the provinces and distributed gifts with royal liberality. Then Mordecai uncovers a conspiracy. When the virgins were assembled a second time, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. But Esther had kept secret her family background and nationality, just as Mordecai had told her to do, for she continued to follow Mordecai's instructions as she had done when he was bringing her up. During the time Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, some weird name, and Teresh, 2 of the king's officers who guarded the doorway, became angry and conspired to assassinate King Xerxes. But Mordecai found out about the plot and told Queen Esther, who in turn reported it to the king, giving credit to Mordecai. And when the report was investigated and found to be true, the 2 officials were hanged on a gallows. All this was recorded in the book of Annals in the presence of the king. So, a lot happened in that chapter. So Kaylee, if you were Esther, how do you think you would have felt about being forced to marry someone that, especially someone who had a history of not being very nice to his previous wives?
Well, I don't think my husband would be okay with that now, but I'm going to say no, would not like that. But if I could somehow get the 12 months of beauty treatment out of that without having to marry him, I would be down for that.
Exactly.
So,
if you were in Esther's situation, do you think you would have doubted or questioned God? Why? Or why not?
yes, I think I definitely would have, because there was so much, I feel like she was just kind of thrown into it, and there was so much uncertainty around everything she was doing. And, yeah, I think I would have questioned what the plan was, like why my purpose for being here was. So
And I'm sure she was scared.
yeah.
This was all very, very new to her. But one thing, she did find favor from the beginning with everyone, because she was under God's favor. But how did Esther make decisions?
She would seek Mordecai's counsel. So Mordecai was like her, like in this sense, like we're talking about, you want to seek godly wisdom, godly counsel from people you trust. And Mordecai was that for Esther.
Mhm.
And as you can see, he was a good person to get advice from and direction. So,
Because he was like her father.
Yeah.
And she could trust him.
so we're going to read chapter 3 now. So if you guys want to look at the next one, this is Haman. Is that how you pronounce it? Haman? I'm not good at
Not really
pronunciation, so just want to make that forewarning before we go into this chapter. I'm terrible at pronunciation. I blame Hooked on Phonics. I pronounce everything how it looks. Okay, anyway. After these events, King Xerxes honored Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, told y'all, elevating him and giving him a seat of honor higher than that of all the other nobles. All the royal officials at the king's gate knelt down and paid honor to Haman, for the king had commanded this concerning him. But Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor. Then the royal officials at the king's gate asked Mordecai, "Why do you disobey the king's command?" Day after day they spoke to him, but he refused to comply. Therefore they told Haman about it to see whether Mordecai's behavior would be tolerated, for he had told them he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor, he was enraged. Yet having learned who Mordecai's people were, he scorned the idea of killing only Mordecai. Instead, Haman looked for a way to destroy all of Mordecai's people, the Jews, throughout the whole kingdom of Xerxes. In the 12th year of King Xerxes, in the first month, the month of Nisan, the that is the lot, was cast in the presence of Haman to collect a day and a month. And the lot fell on the 12th month, the month of Adar. Then Haman said to King Xerxes, "There is a certain people dispersed among the peoples in all of the provinces of your kingdom, who keep themselves separate. Their customs are different from those of all other people, and they do not obey the king's laws. It is not in the king's best interest to tolerate them. If it pleases the king, let a decree be issued to destroy them, and I will give 10,000 talents of silver to the king's administrators for the royal treasury." So the king took his signet ring from his finger and gave it to Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. "Keep the money," the king said to Haman, "and do with the people as you please." Then on the 13th day of the first month, the royal secretaries were summoned. They wrote out in the script of each province and in the language of each people all Haman's orders to the king's satraps, the governors of the various provinces, and nobles of various peoples. These were written in the name of King Xerxes himself and sealed with his own ring. Dispatches were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces with the order to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jews, young and old, women and children, on a single day, the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, and to plunder their goods. A copy of the text of the edict was to be, I promise I have a college degree, was to be issued a law in every province and made known to the people of every nationality so they would be ready for the day. The couriers went out, spurred on by the king's command, and the edict was issued in the citadel of Susa. The king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Susa was bewildered. So, Crystal, tell me, Mother,
Yes.
how did Esther's situation become even more dangerous in this third chapter?
Well, Mordecai did not comply with, paying honor to Haman. So that made him very, very upset. And so he decided to get rid of Mordecai's people because somehow he knew, I can't remember if it said how, but who his people were. So now also the same people that he has issued a decree to get rid of,
And she's the queen.
and she's the queen. So,
But at this point, they don't know that she's a Jew.
no,
So
at least,
the king doesn't.
The king
King
doesn't.
Xerxes doesn't.
right.
If you were in Esther's position, what questions might you be asking God at this point?
I would probably be very confused, like, what is going on here? Because, I moved to this great status and to the world, even though she may still not be happy. Looks like she has everything materialistic, but like I said, she, still might not be happy at all with that because that doesn't make you happy. But, and now this is, come into play, something I'm sure she never dreamed in her wildest dreams, that they were going to try to kill her people. And she was the queen. So I wouldn't know what to do. I would have no clue what God was planning.
Yeah, that'd be hard because I think a lot of times we like with Esther, and we talked about Job last week. We see the end of their story, so we're like, oh yeah, that sucks then. But like in the end, they get this. Job was blessed so many times over. Esther, ends up saving her people. If you didn't know that, I'm sorry I spoiled the story for you, but she does. And but we don't realize we don't realize that all the anxiety and the uncertainty and the questions they were asking God in the middle of it, and how they must have felt because they didn't know what was coming next. We can see from the outside looking in, hey, don't worry about it because this is what's coming. But when they're in their own story, kind of like you're in yours, they don't know what's coming next. So they just have to trust God. But they still probably voice their doubts to him and their questions, and they still seek godly wisdom like Esther does in Mordecai.
Kind of like the story we're in now with the pandemic. God can see the end, and we can't. So that, just like Esther was here in chapter 3, she was kind of in the scenario, because this could very well mean the end of her people. And she didn't know the end result. I'm sure she had a lot of the same fears. But God did. And in chapter 4, we're going to see how, God brought her through that and what happened.
Sorry I spoiled that for you, but we're going to read what it says.
Okay.
Chapter 4.
When Mordecai learned of all that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the city, wailing loudly and bitterly. But he went only as far as the king's gate, because no one clothed in sackcloth was allowed to enter it. In every province to which the edict and order of the king came, there were great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing. Many lay in sackcloth and ashes. When Esther's maids and eunuchs came and told her about Mordecai, she was in great distress. She sent clothes for him to put on instead of his sackcloth, but he would not accept them. Then Esther summoned Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs assigned to attend her, and ordered him to find out what was troubling Mordecai and why. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate. Mordecai told him everything that had happened to him, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. He also gave him a copy of the text of the edict for their annihilation, which had been published in Susa, to show to Esther and explain it to her. And he told him to urge her to go into the king's presence, to beg for mercy and plead with him for her people. Hathach went back and reported to Esther what Mordecai had said. Then she instructed him to say to Mordecai, all the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that he be put to death. The only exception to this is for the king to extend the gold scepter to him and spare his life. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king. When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to royal position for such a time as this? Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai: Go gather together all the Jews who are in the Suda and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my maids will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went away and carried out all of Esther's instructions. Okay. What did Mordecai ask Esther to do?
Asked her to basically go and plead for the favor of the king on the behalf of the people, which was going to put her life at stake.
And of course, she was hesitant and
Naturally.
knew that the king hadn't called for her in quite some time. And what was his response? What was Mordecai's response to that?
I don't know where we're at.
Even though this was her father, who her father kind of, and who sure loved her, in 12 and 13.
Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to royal position for such a time as this?
So he encouraged her, but was kind of stern.
Yeah.
But, of course she's scared and hesitant, and that was the push she needed.
He didn't sugarcoat it. He told her,
No.
he tough loved her.
Yeah, and he knew that she would probably listen to him, though.
Yeah.
So what do you think you would have done if you were Esther? I'm glad the dog's barking.
Yeah. What do you think, Dempsey? I would have been terrified. I would have been really scared and definitely really hesitant to do that, to put my life, like I think more normal people would, to put my life on the line like that. You would like to think, yeah, I would totally do that, like, she did, but when you're actually faced in that position, you don't really know what you do. I would hope I would still go, so.
And of course Esther decided to, do what Mordecai suggested. Because she had that much, I'm sure she had faith in God, even though it wasn't mentioned, and like I just automatically thought it was when we were talking earlier, but I'm sure she did, and she knew Mordecai had a strong faith, and just like anybody in the Bible or now that's had to face death or their faith, that we've read about, they a lot of times are martyred for their faith, and they, just like we've been talking about Daniel, they were ready to be martyred for theirs, but whatever reason God spared them. But and as we see, He did Esther, but that doesn't, always, that's not the case. But His plan is always perfect and good. So we may have answered all this on the next little part. She made a difficult choice in the time of uncertainty, and she saved the lives of God's people as a result. And like we just mentioned, and I didn't know this until we were talking about earlier, that God was never mentioned, not once, in Esther. But that does not mean he was absent, even if his name wasn't in there. I'm guessing, and how I've always thought, is Esther went to God in prayer when she was deciding what to do. But all we know for sure by the text is that she sought the advice of a godly person who was Mordecai.
Yeah. And you can see, this is a great illustration of what it means to seek guidance in your life when you have a difficult decision. We may not face a decision this life-threatening in our lives, and we may, but with any decision, it's important that we look for people we can trust and that we know will not just tell us what we want to hear. Mordecai didn't tell her what she wanted to hear. He tough loved her and said, listen, like, you don't do, he told her how it was, and you wanna look
Put
for
your
people.
big girl pants on.
Yeah, let's get it going. And you want to look for people in your life that are going to push you in the same ways, not just going to tell you what you want to hear and baby you, but they're gonna really push you in your walk with Christ and live in your life because they know looking on the outside in what your potential is, and they know what you can do. And that's why they're saying that, to push you, is because they know what they believe you have so much more to offer, and they know what you can do. And so this is a really good example of that. We're gonna look at one more example. So I want you guys to flip to 1 Kings 19.
Be like an hour.
That's okay. Alright, we're gonna read 1 Kings 19, 1 through 18. We're gonna learn about Elijah. Okay. Now, also, again, I'm not gonna be able to pronounce these right. Now, Ahab, told Jezebel everything Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, "May the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like that one of them." Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there, while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom's bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. "I have had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. All at once an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." Don't have to tell me twice. He looked around, and there by his head was some bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank and then lay down again. The angel which is probably a good illustration of what quarantine looks like right now. The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." So he got up and ate and drank. Strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. There he went into a cave and spent the night. And the word of the Lord came to him. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He replied, "I have been very zealous for the Lord Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too." The Lord said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. Then the voice said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He replied, "I have been very zealous for the Lord Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too." The Lord said to him, "Go back the way you came, and go to the desert of Damascus. When you get there, anoint Hazael, king of Aram. Also anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, king over Israel. And anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, from Abel Meholah, to succeed you as a prophet. Jehu will put to death any who escape the word of the sword of Hazael." English is really hard. "And Elisha will put to death any who escape the sword of Jehu. Yet I reserve 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed down to bow, and whose mouths have not kissed him." So, Elijah had just performed a miracle to show how powerful God was, but right after it happened, his life was threatened. So Elijah panicked, ran away, and hid in a cave. How many times do we feel like doing that? I know I do sometimes. I feel like panicking and running away and hiding in Carter caves, but it's fine. So, Mom, if you were in Elijah's position, what questions do you think you would have been asking God?
Well, I would probably be kind of like, you brought me through all of this, and now somebody's trying to kill me. You know, I mean, like,
Right.
like
what the heck?
why? Like, what is going on here? Like, haven't I been through or done enough?
Yeah.
And I think that's how he feels. And he's tired of running, and he's tired of fighting. And with, and some of you all probably, you know, I hope, too young to feel that way or anything. But some people that deal with things, you know, forever, that's probably kind of how that's where they get, that's how they feel. They're just tired. Of course, they are refreshed like Elijah is in this passage, like God, you know, told him to get up and eat, and because he was going to need strength, because of course he was not done with Elijah, and wanted him to continue on his journey. So I don't know, but he listened to God.
True.
And God gave him the strength to go on.
God's instructions to Elijah may seem like irrelevant or boring details at first glance, but they're actually really important. God told Elijah to get connected with a support system. A lot of those people I got tongue tied on. A group of people who could help him. Even though Elijah had been comforted by God directly, God knew Elijah needed other godly people to help him carry on. So although we have God and he is the most important thing, but it is so important to surround yourself with a community of believers as well that will pour into you and help you keep going when you don't know what to do or you don't feel like you have the strength to carry on. So you need both of those things to keep growing. When we're experiencing confusion, uncertainty, or fear, it's easy to question what we're supposed to do next and why God isn't making our path clear. I know I've done that multiple times. Scripture never promises that God will directly tell us what to do next, but the stories of Esther and Elijah show us that we need godly people to help us figure that out sometimes. So how do we make decisions when we're not sure what God wants us to do next? We get a support system, because godly people can help us with our questions and with our doubts.
Before you finish that story of yours,
Okay.
you skip that part.
All right, so now I want you all to get out. I want you all to get out a pen and paper, and I'm going to list some things, and I want you all to write out. I'm going to list some important people. You know, you should. If you can't think of somebody for each of these things, I encourage you to make it a point to start praying that God puts people like this in your life to surround you in a community. I feel like I have a really great community surrounding me right now of believers, but I didn't always have that. And I wouldn't say I really got into that until I was in college and really sought them out. And it was something I did pray for in high school and then through and into college. And I feel like God has strengthened a lot of friendships I grew up with through that, and he's also brought me new ones, and I feel like I'm really surrounded by a godly group of people. But it started with prayer, and it started with me and God praying about that and praying that he would put people like this in my life. So if on your pen and paper you can't list specific people for these categories, start praying about it and just keep your mind open to what and who he'll show you. So there's going to be some categories. I want you all to write down some names of people that you can trust in each of these categories. So the first one is a cheerleader. Who do you go to when you need a dose of encouragement and positivity? Who can you always trust to give you a pep talk? So write someone down for that. Cheerleader, pep talk, positivity, the encourager. The next one is a counselor. Who always gives you great advice? When you're in a dilemma, have questions, or you don't know how to move forward, who do you trust to help you take the next step? So who's someone that you look to that you know is always going to give you good advice? They're going to be your Mordecai. They're going to give you the advice that you may not want to hear, but the advice that you need. Coach. Who can always motivate you to keep making progress on your goals? So who is it that is continuing to be your backbone and encourage you in everything you do? Mentor. Who is an older person who has an ongoing relationship with you, who makes you better, and who you trust enough to share personal details of your life with. So this is just somebody that's farther along in their walk with Christ, and they can pour into you, and they can really disciple you. Pastor. Maybe this person has the official title of pastor, or maybe they don't. who is guiding and advising you in your faith and helping you develop a deeper relationship with God. So who in your life, it could be Ben, it could be Kevin, it could be Christy, it could be Crystal, it could be Mandy, Lexi, it could be Mark, it could be Austin, it could be anybody, but it doesn't have to be those people either. It's just whoever is advising you and guiding you in your faith and helping you develop a deeper relationship with God. So confidant. Who do you trust with your deepest secrets? This should be someone who is safe, trusted, and wise. So who do you feel like you can trust the most with some of your deepest things that you're dealing with and your secrets? Prayer support. So who is someone that you can always trust to pray for you? This isn't someone that's just like you text and they're like praying for you and then they might not. This is someone you know is going to be a prayer warrior for you and what you want prayed for. So these people won't guarantee will always make right decisions. Having them doesn't mean you're going to make every single right decision or never make a wrong decision again. But where we're uncertain, where we are uncertain of where God is leading us, they'll at least make they'll make the decisions easier to make, the good decisions, because you'll have them surrounding you and pouring into you, and you'll know through God and through them what He wants you to make. So.
Okay. So to summarize this last series, we've covered a lot of things like having doubts and questions is totally normal. You're not alone in that. And God does not make us feel bad or shame us for those questions. He wants us to ask questions. And He actually gives us the evidence in order to answer our questions, so that increases our faith. Especially when life gets painful or disappointing things happen, your questions may not seem like they get answered. But God is there. He will never leave you. Nothing can separate you from His love. And when we're questioning or doubting where He's leading us, He knows godly people can help us with these questions and will give us a support system if we are looking for one and praying for one. And as we close it out, I hope the main things that you take away from this series are: you don't have to be afraid to ask questions or have doubts, because God's big enough to handle that. You can feel safe enough to voice those questions and doubts here, or at least with someone you trust. And when you have a question or doubt that you need to work through, I hope you know that we will help you and we're always here for you, and that any one of us would help you work through that, and we love you.
Yeah. So with that, you'll be meeting your small groups on Zoom, and they have some questions for you all that you're going to get to talk about a little more in depth. And they're just going to be able to dive deeper in. And this small group is a great community of people and believers where you can search for these things that we've been talking about to help guide you and lead you in these things. So I guess we'll pray.
Yeah.
Okay. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for technology and that we can still meet and share your word and glorify you and worship you as a family, even from different places. And I just thank you for the examples in the Bible, for what it looks like to be confused and uncertain, and what it looks like to lean on you and lean on our godly, wise counsel in our lives. And I just pray that you be with all of us, because we are all in a very uncertain time. Kind of like Mom said, this is probably the perfect time to have a lesson like this, because these two characters were surrounded with uncertainty, and I very much feel like we and all the people watching are probably filled with some uncertainty too. And so I just pray that you help us, you lead us and guide us, and that your peace that surpasses all understanding would cover us. And just be in small group time, really work in all of the youth's lives and the adults' lives, and just help us all grow in you. And in your precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Go forth and do good things.
We miss you all.
And yes, we miss you. And practice social distancing and wash your hands.
Mm-hmm.
And
Don't touch your face.
Don't touch
like
your
I have
face.
10 times during this
Yes.
presentation.
Same. And yeah. So, have a good week.